Imagine living a life where nothing, not their rudeness, not their lies, but not even their disrespect, can shake your peace. Imagine walking through the chaos of the world with a calm so deep that people wonder if you see something they don't. You still hear the insults, you still see the drama, but it no longer enters your system. It touches you, but it doesn't move you. Yet let's be honest, how many times have you let one careless comment ruin your entire day? How many nights have you laid staring at the ceiling, replaying an argument, feeling the anger all over again, even though the bare moment has long passed? Most people don't experience peace. They live in reaction. They don't control their emotions control them. One insult, one rejection, one unexpected look, and their entire energy shifts, not because the world is that powerful, but because they never learned how to take that power back. But here's the truth. Stoicism, taught centuries ago, and neuroscience confirmed today, show that you can become emotionally untouchable, not cold, not numb, but untouchable, like a mountain in the midst of a storm. The wind howls, the rain pounds, but the mountain remains unmoved. That is the inner strength we're activating today. Once you have it, nothing someone says can throw you off. You will never feel small because of someone else's mood. You will never again be angry or disturbed by anyone or anything. We're not just talking about staying calm, we're talking about total emotional sovereignty, true Stoic power, the kind Marcus Aurelius wrote about. Not just to appear wise, but to carry the weight of an empire without losing his soul. So stay with me. What we're about to explore will change how you see people, how you handle triggers, and most importantly, how you master yourself. And if you value the clarity, the calm, the tools to live unshaken, there's one small favor I'll ask: hit the subscribe button. It's free, but it helps more than you know. It's the kind of support that keeps this content flowing. Remember, it was never them. That's the first shift in perception you need. If you want to stop being angry, triggered, or emotionally hijacked by others, you might think it's about how they spoke to you, the disrespect in their tone, or the way they dismissed your effort or rolled their eyes. But that's only the surface. What really hurts is what these moments awaken inside you, something deeper, or something older, something you may not fully recognize. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That's what happens when we blame others for our emotions. We hand over the keys to our own state, then wonder why chaos keeps driving us. Here's the truth. No one can make you feel anything without your participation. Anger, frustration, resentment, they're not caused by others. They're caused by your response to them. And that response is shaped by the unresolved parts of you that you've been avoiding for years. Think about it. Two people can face the same insult. One brushes it off, the other stews in it for days. The insult didn't change. What changed is what it touched inside. We react not to what they said or did, but to what it reflects within us. Old wounds, unquestioned beliefs, expectations, and more often than not, it's not even about the moment. It's about everything that moment reminds us of. When someone ignores you and you feel invisible, that pain wasn't created in that second. It's a pattern, a mirror, perhaps reflecting all the times you felt overlooked growing up. When someone criticizes you and you explode, but that reaction didn't just come out of now. From the words themselves, it stems from a need to protect an identity you've worked tirelessly to maintain. Perhaps being seen as competent, strong, or respectable is so central to your self-view that even the slightest crack feels like a total collapse. That's the real battlefield, not the conversation, not the co-worker, the partner, or the stranger online. It's what's happening inside you. Aristotle once said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." And self-knowledge isn't simply knowing your likes or your goals. It's understanding the areas in you that still hurt, that still seek approval, that still believe peace must come from how others treat you. Here's where your breakthrough starts. You are not your reaction. You are not your anger. You are not your pain. You are the observer, the awareness that sits beneath it all. The more you connect with that awareness, the less you rely on the outside world to be perfect for you to feel okay. This doesn't mean you must tolerate disrespect. It means your peace no longer depends on whether it exists or not. This is a completely different level of freedom. Because most people aren't truly living, they're just reacting. One text ruins their morning. One comment online derails their entire mindset. One unkind look from someone else and they spiral into self-doubt. That's not living, that's surviving on emotional autopilot. But you can step off that ride. It starts when you stop casting others as the villain in your story. The moment you stop saying, "They made me feel this way," and start saying, "Something inside me responded," everything shifts. You take back your power. You begin asking better questions, not, "Why are they like this?" but, "Why does this bother me so much?" Not, "Why are they disrespectful?" but, "What am I holding on to that makes me so reactive?" For that question, "What am I holding on to?" is where most of your answers lie. Plato once said, "The first and best victory is to conquer the self." And conquering the self isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about understanding where they come from and deciding if they still serve you. It's about noticing when your pride wants to fight back, when your ego wants to be right, and choosing not to be controlled by that. It isn't passivity, this is power. It's the power to choose your response, to feel the surge of emotion without letting it dictate your next move. That kind of control isn't inborn, it's trained, like a muscle, like discipline, like presence. The people who trigger you most are your greatest teachers. Not because they're wise or kind, but because they reveal where you're still attached, where you're still raw, where you've built an identity that relies on others validating you. When you use these moments as mirrors, not battlefields, you grow. That's the difference between reacting and evolving. Socrates once said, "Let him who would move the world first move himself." And that movement doesn't start by changing your environment. It starts by watching yourself clearly, becoming aware of the stories you tell, the assumptions you make, the roles you play, and the truths you hold without question. When you expect others to treat you better, and they don't, the gap between expectation and reality creates suffering. But when you accept that people act based on who they are, but not who you are, you stop tying your emotions to their behavior. You become unshakable. Your peace is no longer reactive, it's rooted. You don't get offended easily. You don't chase apologies. You don't need everyone to understand you, agree with you, or like you. You know who you are, and that self-knowledge becomes your anchor. Even when the storm hits, even when someone disrespects you, even when life feels unfair, because you've stopped trying to control things that were never yours to control. You've stopped outsourcing your peace to people who are just as lost, just as reactive as you once were. You've stopped relying on the world to reflect your worth. That's what Stoicism has always been about. Epictetus taught us to focus only on what's within our control, our thoughts, our actions, our beliefs, everything else, what people say, what they do, how they treat us, is external. If you anchor your calm to the external, you'll never be steady. But if you learn to rest it within yourself, nothing can move you. That's the invitation. To move through life with grace, not because life is gentle, but because you are grounded. To face criticism, rejection, misunderstanding and remain clear, not numb, not shut down, but strong, centered and awake. The next time someone tries to provoke you, let it pass through. Don't deny the reaction, just don't identify with it. See it rise, watch it fall. Let it exist as what it is, a ripple, not a wave. And if it still affects you, if the sting lingers, if thoughts come back later, that's not failure. That's the doorway. That's where you step through and say, here's where I still need to do the work. Because the goal isn't to become emotionless. The goal is to become emotionally free, not controlled by impulses, not ruled by pride, but aware, intentional, and unbothered. Not because you avoid life, but because you face it so deeply it no longer scares you. And when you live from that place, people notice. They may not say it out loud, but that they feel it, the steadiness, the the energy that says, "Boar, you can bring me chaos, but you won't pull me into it." That's not arrogance, that's mastery. And if you've made it this far, there's a reason. Some part of you knows it's time to stop giving your peace away to people who don't even know what they're doing. Some part of you knows your calm is too precious to hand out in exchange for approval, validation, or control. You weren't born knowing how to handle rejection. You didn't arrive in this world with a manual saying, when someone disrespects you, flare up. When they ignore you, crumble. When they criticize you, defend your pride at all costs. Those reactions, the quick anger but the defensiveness, the need to prove yourself, they were learned, passed down, absorbed like second-hand smoke. You didn't write the script, you just started playing the part. And that's what makes this so powerful, to realize most of what you think is you, your temperament, your triggers, the way you react under pressure, isn't actually you. It's conditioning, it's habit, it's a script that started writing itself long before you even realized it was happening. Somewhere along the way, maybe someone taught you, directly or indirectly, that being ignored means you don't matter, that being challenged means you have to fight, but that being wrong means you're not enough. These beliefs act like hidden code, but running silently in the background of your life, and until you bring them into the light, but they will continue to direct your reactions without your permission. Carl Jung put it best, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That means every emotional outburst, every sudden shutdown, every time you overthink something someone said, that's not fate. That's not your personality. That's programming.br. And programming can be rewritten.br, but you can't change a script you're on. You're acting out. The work begins by becoming the observer, not the actor. You notice, you pause, you step back just far enough to ask, what part of me is speaking right now? That question, when asked sincerely, opens the door to everything, because the moment you feel triggered, the moment something or someone lights a fire inside you, it's easy to believe that fire is justified, righteous.br. But strong emotion doesn't always mean truth. Often, it means only that the script has been activated. And when you keep playing out the same emotional loops over and over, with different people and different situations, you start to notice something strange. The actors keep changing but the storyline remains the same. That's the giveaway. It's never really about them. It's about what they awaken within you. Most people never trace that fire back to the spark. They don't question their reaction. They assume it's valid just because it feels real. But intensity does not equal accuracy. Just because you feel it deeply doesn't mean it's rooted in clarity. When you begin to unpack those reactions, what you'll often find beneath isn't strength, it's fear. Fear of being seen a certain way, fear of not being heard, fear of not being enough. The script says, if I'm criticized, I must defend. But what if you didn't? But what if you simply listened, filtered, and chose your response? Not from fear, but from presence. That's authorship. That's taking the pen back. Happy doesn't mean you'll never feel anger, sadness, or discomfort again. It means you're no longer reacting from an unconscious place. You're responding with awareness. That space between trigger and reaction. That's where your freedom lives. Viktor Frankl, a man who survived unspeakable trauma, said it like this, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. But imagine how different life feels when you stop reacting from the old script. Someone interrupts you, and instead of jumping to reclaim your voice, you observe, you breathe, you respond calmly, or maybe not at all. Not because you're weak, but because you've realized not every moment deserves your energy. You've stopped auditioning for people who don't hold the power to validate you, and that shift isn't subtle. It's transformational. It's the moment you move from being emotionally controlled to emotionally in control. Controlled, not robotically but presently, consciously, grounded. When you no longer need to prove, win or be right just to feel secure. You've won something much deeper than any argument could offer. And you begin to notice the scripts that once controlled you lose their grip. The need for approval fades. The fear of being misunderstood softens. The urge to match chaos with chaos dissolves. You realize you don't have to mirror the chaos around you. You can be the calm that reminds people there is another way. There's another way to live. Plato once said, the first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. He wasn't talking about domination. He was talking about discipline, self-awareness, the quiet strength of someone who knows their worth and doesn't need to shout it to the world. Because when you're still running on an old script, it's not just your emotions that suffer, it's your relationships, your peace, your potential. How many doors have you closed because you reacted too quickly? How many connections have you damaged because the old story said, if they don't respect me immediately, cut them off? That story may have once protected you, but now it's probably keeping you small. Taking authorship of your reactions means you're no longer a puppet of past pain. But you start recognizing patterns. You feel the heat rising, and instead of acting on it, you sit with it. You ask yourself, what would my higher self do here? And then you do that, even if it's hard, especially if it's hard. Socrates once said, the unexamined life is not worth living. And if that feels too heavy, let's flip it. The examined life is where you find your peace. That's where you begin to experience something rare in this world. Sovereignty over your inner world. That's not something someone gives you, that's something you claim. And yes, it takes work. Yes, it's uncomfortable at times. Watching yourself isn't always fun, but neither is staying stuck in patterns that keep you reactive, restless, and resentful. When you stop reacting from the script, you start writing something new. You stop being the echo of every harsh word you've ever heard. You stop playing roles written by fear, ego, or childhood defense mechanisms. You start living from choice, and people around you will feel the difference. They'll notice that you don't flinch the way you used to, that you're not baited by sarcasm or passive aggression, that you don't need to win every interaction. You'll stop chasing closure from people who can't even give it to themselves. You'll stop needing every misunderstanding to be corrected. Sometimes you'll just let it go. Not because you're defeated, but because you've chosen peace over performance. That's emotional authorship. That's power. And here's what's even more beautiful, when you start living this way, your presence becomes medicine for yourself, for others. You give people permission to slow down, to reflect, to drop their guard, because your stillness reminds them that maybe, just maybe, they don't have to keep playing the same roles either. So the next time you feel triggered, remember this, that first surge of emotion, it's not you, it's the script, and you don't have to follow it. Be you. Pause, breathe, reclaim the pen, and write something better. Every time you do, you become less of a puppet and more of a presence, less of a reaction and more of a response. And that right there is the path to peace. Because the only real control you have is how you choose to show up. Not what they do, not what they say, just you, your awareness, your choices, your script. And if you've come this far and something in you is waking up, if this resonates in a way you didn't expect, it's not by accident. You were meant to hear it. You didn't lose control when they said the words. You lost it the moment you took them personally. That split second when your heart tightened, your jaw locked, and your mind began spinning with comebacks and judgments. That was the real surrender. The moment you got offended, you gave away your power. And most of us do it without even realizing, not because we're weak, but because we've been trained to believe that offense is automatic. Someone insults you, you feel wounded. Someone disagrees, you feel threatened. Someone misunderstands you, and suddenly you feel invisible. But what if that pain, that sting, that emotional drop wasn't something that happened to you, but something you allowed? We live in a world where offense is currency. I tease how people bond, how they gain attention, how they define themselves, by what makes them angry. But when everything offends you, you're no longer responding to reality, you're reacting to a fragile self-image, one that requires constant protection and reinforcement. And that's exhausting. Aristotle once said, "Anybody can become angry. That's easy, but to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that's not within everyone's power." He was pointing to something that most people completely miss. Real emotional power isn't found in reaction. It's found in restraint, in discernment, in choosing what truly deserves your energy. Because here's the truth, offense is never objective. What hurts you may hardly register for someone else. It's not the event itself, it's your interpretation. It's the story your mind starts telling. The second something uncomfortable happens, they're disrespecting me, they don't value me, but they're trying to hurt me. Once that narrative locks in, your nervous system reacts as if it's the absolute truth. But offense isn't an alarm, it's a mirror. It shows you which parts of your identity are still fragile, still unhealed. That's where your real work lives, not in silencing the world, but in strengthening the world within you. When your sense of worth relies on everyone treating you perfectly, you're always at risk. One sharp word, one misstep, and your peace vanishes. .br. What makes someone truly unbothered isn't numbness, it's clarity. It's knowing that your value doesn't rise or fall based on someone else's opinion. It's knowing you don't need everyone to understand you. You don't need every comment to be kind. You don't even need everyone to agree with you. What you need is to stop volunteering your power to those who haven't earned it. That power isn't something they take, it's something you give. Every time you let someone else's words decide your mood, every time you shrink or explode to defend an identity, every time you let offense define by the moment instead of your principles, the more you train your mind to look for disrespect, for betrayal, for injustice, even when it's not there. Plato warned us long ago we can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy is when men are afraid of the light, and this is exactly that. We become afraid of truth, of growth, of self-responsibility, because it means we can no longer blame the world for how we feel. And that feels uncomfortable at first. But it's also liberating, because if you're not responsible for your reactions, you're just a puppet. You're always at the mercy of the next person's behavior, the next careless word, the next argument, the next disagreement. But if you claim responsibility, everything changes. But you realize you have options. You can pause, you can reflect, you can refrain, you can choose. You can learn to ask yourself better questions in the heat of the moment. Not, why are they like this, but why does this hit me so hard? But not, how dare they? But what part of me still needs this kind of validation? But that level of self-honesty might sting at first, but it liberates you, because it puts the focus back where it belongs, on your inner world. You begin to see offense not as injury, but as insight, as feedback, as a signal that something within you is still raw, still seeking approval, but still trying to prove its worth. And when you can look at that without flinching, without running, without blaming, that's when you start to grow. Socrates once said, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new." Getting offended is often just fighting the old beliefs, old stories, old defenses. But when you stop feeding that loop, you can start building something stronger, a new default, one rooted in confidence, composure, quiet strength. You stop reacting from your wounds and start responding from your values. You become harder to provoke, not because you're colder, but because you're wiser. Because you know the difference between something harmful and something uncomfortable, between disrespect and misunderstanding, between real threats and imagined ones. The moment you realize you don't have to respond to every challenge, is the moment you step into a deeper freedom. And that freedom, isn't about letting people walk all over you. It's about refusing to let them walk inside your mind without permission. Bar. Let's say someone insults you. You hear it. You feel it. But you don't react. You don't internalize it. You watch it pass like a car on the street. It's there. You see it, but it doesn't hit you. That's not detachment. That's self-respect. You respect yourself enough not to let careless words rewrite your self-image. When you operate from that place, your energy changes. You stop needing to prove yourself in every interaction. You stop getting pulled into pointless arguments. You stop throwing away your peace like it's cheap. And people feel it. They may not say it, but they sense the difference, that groundedness, that emotional weight, that quiet command that says, I'm not here to be triggered. I'm here to be free. Freedom in this sense isn't about time, money, or lifestyle, but it's emotional sovereignty. It's knowing you are in charge of how you feel. Not the world, not the crowd, not the algorithm, not the stranger in the comments, you. And yes, it's hard sometimes, especially when the insult feels personal. When it echoes something you already feared about yourself. That's when offense feels most justified. But it's also when the opportunity for growth is greatest, because it invites you to look inside and ask, is this something I believe about myself? If it is, work on it. If it's not, let it go. Either way, you win. Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others, there's another way to experience life. Plato once said, the first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. He wasn't talking about dominating others, he was talking about discipline, or about self-awareness, about the quiet strength of someone who knows their worth and doesn't need to announce it. Because when you're still operating under an old script, it's not just your emotions that suffer. It's your relationships, your peace, your potential. How many opportunities have you missed because you reacted too quickly? How many connections have you hurt because the old story insisted, if they don't respect me immediately, cut them off? That story might have protected you once, but now it's probably keeping you small. Taking authorship of your reactions means you are no longer a puppet of past pain. You begin to see the patterns. You feel the heat rising, and instead of acting on it, you sit with it. You ask, what would my highest self do here? And then you do that. Even if it's difficult. Especially if it's difficult. Socrates once said, the unexamined life is not worth living, and if that feels heavy, let's flip it. The examined life is where you find your peace. That's where you experience something rare, sovereignty over your inner world. That's not given to you. That's something you claim. Yes, it takes work. Yes, it can be uncomfortable, but watching yourself isn't always pleasant. But neither is staying stuck in reactive patterns that keep you restless, resentful, and on edge. When you stop reacting from the old script, you start writing something new. You stop being the echo of every harsh word you've heard. You stop playing roles written by fear, ego, or childhood defense mechanisms. You start living from choice, and the people around. You will notice. They'll see you don't flinch the way you used to. You're not baited by sarcasm or passive aggression. You don't need to win every argument. You stop chasing closure from those who can't give it to themselves. You stop expecting every misunderstanding to be fixed. Sometimes you just let it go, not because you're defeated, but because you've chosen peace over performance. That's emotional authorship. That's power. And here's what's even more beautiful. When you live this way, your presence becomes medicine. For yourself, for others. You give people permission to slow down, to reflect, to drop their guard, because your stillness reminds them that maybe they don't have to keep playing the same roles either. So the next time you feel triggered, remember this. That first surge of emotion is not you. It's the script, and you don't have to follow it. You can pause. Breathe, reclaim the pen, and write something better. Every time you do, you become less of a puppet, more of a presence. Barbr less of a reaction, more of a response. And that, right there, is the true path to peace. Because the only real control you have is how you choose to show up, not what they do, not what they say, Barbr, just you, your awareness, your choices, your script. And if you've come this far and something in you is waking up, if this resonates in a way you didn't expect, it's not by accident. You were meant to hear this. You didn't lose control when they spoke. You lost the moment you took it personally. That split second, your heart tightens, your jaw locks. Your mind starts spinning with comebacks and judgments. That was the real surrender. The moment you got offended, you gave away your power. Most of us do it without realizing. Not because we're weak, but because we've been trained to believe that offense is automatic. Someone insults you, you feel wounded. Someone disagrees, you feel threatened. Someone misunderstands, and you feel invisible. But what if that pain, that sting, that emotional drop wasn't something done to you, but something you allowed? We live in a world where offense is currency. It's how people bond, how they gain attention, how they define themselves, by what makes them angry. But when everything offends you, you're not responding to reality. You're reacting to a fragile self-image that requires constant protection and reinforcement, and that's exhausting. Aristotle once said, anyone can become angry. That's easy, but to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that's not within everyone's power. He was pointing to something most people miss. Real emotional power isn't in reaction. It's in restraint, in discernment, in choosing what deserves your energy, because offense is never objective. What hurts you may hardly register for others. It's not the event. It's your interpretation. It's the story your mind starts telling. Plato once wrote, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." He didn't say everyone deserves your energy, but he reminded us that most people are carrying something invisible, an old betrayal, a deep fear, a relentless voice that never allows them to rest. And when that pressure builds, it often erupts onto the wrong person. That doesn't mean you should accept mistreatment. It means you learn to see it for what it is. You hold your ground, recognize the pain, but honor your own boundaries. But you don't let the insult enter your identity. You don't let someone else's behavior rewrite your story. You let it pass, not because you're weak, but because you're finally strong enough to not need their validation. And what happens over time is remarkable. You start to see patterns that were invisible before. You notice how often people lash out after being hurt, how quickly coldness follows insecurity, how silence often masks fear of rejection. Suddenly, the behaviors that once confused or wounded you become easier to interpret. You stop guessing what's wrong with you and start understanding what remains unresolved in them. That shift is subtle, but it's everything. It's the difference between spending hours trying to fix yourself to win someone else's approval and spending that same time returning to your own peace. It's the difference between reacting with anger and responding with clarity. It's the difference between making someone else's wounds about you and letting them stay where they belong. But let's be honest, this isn't easy, especially when the words cut deep when they come from someone you love or someone you trusted. But in those moments, it's natural to feel shaken. That's okay, you're not a robot. You're not here to be untouched, but you are here to be aware, to notice the reaction, to witness it and then to remind yourself, this pain is theirs, not mine. Because the moment you internalize it, you make it part of your identity, and once it's in there, it becomes harder to shake. You carry it into the next interaction, the next relationship, the next version of yourself. Before you know it, your reflection is shaped not by truth, but by wounds that never belonged to you. Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So is peace. So is presence. So is emotional freedom. It's not a one-time epiphany. It's a daily choice to return to your center, but to see clearly, to feel the pain without becoming it. The next time someone is sharp with you, try this pause. Take a breath, but say silently, this is their storm, not mine. You don't need to fix it, you don't need to understand it. You just need to know it's not a reflection of you. And if that helps even once, if it saves your peace for a single day, then it's worth it. Because the people who bleed on you, they may never know the impact of their words, but you do. And that awareness gives you something rare, the ability to stop the cycle, to end the transfer of pain, to feel what happens around you, without letting it redefine what happens within you. So when the world gets loud, and the comments sharp, and the people around you forget their own worth, and try to project it onto you, stay rooted, not defensive, not dismissive, just steady. No one tells you this when you're young, but the deepest emotional pain you'll feel in life often won't come from what people do. It will come from what you expected them to do, and they didn't. That sting, that disappointment you carry, the tension you replay, later tea night, it's usually not about the words or the silence. It's about the invisible contract you were holding onto, the one that said, if I'm kind, they'll respect me. If I show up, they'll value me. If I'm honest, they'll never hurt me. But no one signed that contract except you, and when life doesn't follow your script, it feels like betrayal. But it's not betrayal. It's life being life. It's people being human. And it's you slowly learning that your expectations were never guarantees. They were silent demands the world never agreed to. Aristotle said, hope is a waking dream. Are unexamined expectations. They're more like sleeping traps. You walk into them blindly, thinking the world owes you, but thinking people will love you as you love them, thinking fairness is a rule but not a hope. And when those expectations collapse, it doesn't just hurt, it breaks a version of reality you thought was secure. We don't often realize it, but most of our emotional suffering is self-authored, not consciously, not with malice but through the quiet, constant creation of inner contracts with our friends, our partners, our family, even strangers. We walk through life believing, if I do this, I should get that, But life doesn't work like a vending machine. You don't insert kindness and automatically get appreciation. You don't give your best and automatically receive fairness. People don't play by rules they never knew they were part of. And that's where the pain comes from, when someone forgets to acknowledge your effort. It hurts not because of the action itself, but because of what you expected in return. When you open your heart to someone and they step back, it burns, not because sharing was wrong, but because you assumed they'd hold space for you. We aren't wounded only by what happens, we are wounded by what we expected to happen instead. Carl Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, but I'd add, the most liberating thing might be to accept others as they are. Not as we hoped they'd be, not as we assumed they'd act, but as they actually show up. Because when you stop expecting people to fit the versions you created in your mind, reality finally breathes, and with that breath comes peace, Doesn't mean abandoning standards. It doesn't mean tolerating harm, It means learning the difference between a value and an expectation. A value is how you choose to live. An expectation is how you believe others should live. One gives you power. The other gradually drains it. Plato once said, wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools speak because they must. In the same way, wise people give because it's who they are, but not because they expect a result. When you remove the hidden strings from your actions, you begin to act from love, not leverage. That's rare. That's powerful. Think of how many times you've felt let down by someone who didn't realize they were performing on a stage you designed in your mind. You assumed they should know better, say something, show up, but perhaps they weren't trying to hurt you. Perhaps they were just being themselves, imperfect, unaware, operating from their own unspoken scripts. Maybe the real pain wasn't what they did, but what you expected them to do and never questioned until it was too late. Socrates reminded us, the only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing. That includes not knowing how others should respond or what they should feel. The truth is, we barely understand ourselves, so expecting others to meet us bar exactly where we think they should, at the emotional level we hoped for, is a guarantee of suffering. What if you started giving without expecting anything back? What if you loved people for who they are, not who you wished they'd become? What if kindness was your baseline, not your bargaining chip? But that's not weakness, that's emotional freedom. Because the moment you let go of emotional contracts, those silent agreements where you believed your effort should guarantee something, you begin to see people and situations more clearly. You respond from values, but not resentment. You stop punishing others for failing to fulfill roles they never volunteered for. It's not easy. The ego loves to keep score. I did this, why didn't they do that? But the soul doesn't play that game. The soul gives. The soul forgives. The soul moves on, not to escape pain, but because it knows clinging to invisible contracts only breeds bitterness, and bitterness is like drinking poison and waiting for others to feel it. Let it go. Write a new kind of contract, one that involves only you, one that says, I will speak honestly, show up fully, act with integrity, not because I expect a return, but because that is who I have chosen to be. That's where true strength begins. That's where you stop being controlled by disappointment. Disappointment doesn't come from others, it comes from your story about them. Carl Jung also said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to understanding ourselves. What irritates us most is when people don't act as we imagined, when reality doesn't match the emotional contract we secretly held. Instead of letting it fuel frustration, let it fuel growth. Ask yourself, but what did I expect? Why did I expect that? Was it fair? Sometimes it's not about lowering expectations, it's about releasing the hidden ones. The ones you never spoke, the ones you didn't even know were running the show. Once those are gone, something beautiful takes their place, gratitude. You start to appreciate people for what they do bring, not just what they don't. You begin to see life not as something that owes you a return, but as something rich with unpredictability. And strangely, when you stop expecting so much from others, they often show up more sincerely. No pressure, no scorekeeping, no silent weight they can feel but don't understand. You're just free. If you've ever wondered why life sometimes feels heavy, but it's not always because of what's happening. It's often because of what you expected to happen, and now must let go of. Most of the pain you carry, isn't from the world, it's from the person you think you must be, the identity you've shaped and protected for years. That image isn't just how you see yourself, it's a contract your ego wrote behind your back, full of rules you never agreed to, yet followed daily. Rules like, if I'm smart, I can't be wrong, If I'm kind, people must be gentle. If I'm successful, I should be respected. These rules are invisible, but you feel them every time someone touches a nerve. Questions you, interrupts you, or doesn't see you the way you see yourself. Something tightens inside. It's not just discomfort. It's fear. Fear that the identity you built is challenged, and if it breaks, you wonder what's underneath. Plato said, the first and best victory is to conquer self. But how do you conquer something you don't fully understand? Most people don't realize the image they defend isn't who they are. It's a mask, a performance, a structure of beliefs built on experience, repetition, and the need to survive emotionally. It's not wrong, it's fragile. And that fragility is why you suffer when the world doesn't match your inner script. If someone calls you lazy and you see yourself as hard-working, the sting isn't their words, it's the clash. If someone ignores you, and you pride yourself on being important, the pain isn't in the silence, it's in what it says about your value. Your identity resists anything that contradicts its narrative. When it resists, it creates conflict inside first, then outside. But Carl Jung said, we cannot change anything unless we accept it, and that includes the self. But acceptance isn't passivity. It means recognizing the parts of you built on fear, approval, and pressure, and being willing to let them soften, being willing to question them. Because, when you ask yourself, who am I really, most people reply with titles, labels, and roles. I'm a good person. I'm a leader. I'm someone who doesn't get disrespected. But the SC identities are often built defensively, not to express who we truly are, but to avoid who we fear becoming. And the tighter we cling, the more fragile we become. What if your identity contract didn't need defense? What if you didn't have to always be seen as right, strong, or unbothered? What if you could just exist without explanation, without apology, without constant mental gymnastics to prove who you are? Socrates reminded us, the unexamined life is not worth living. When you pause to truly examine your emotional patterns, you often discover that pain follows protection. The more you protect an identity, the more vulnerable you become to anything that threatens it. That isn't confidence. That is a prison. Because then your peace relies on how others see you, how they speak to you, whether they understand you or not. But freedom, true freedom, is knowing who you are at your core, beyond jobs, compliments, or reputation. It's being secure in your character, even when someone questions you, rooted in values, even when others misunderstand. It's the quiet certainty that you don't have to be perfect to be whole. Aristotle believed that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, but knowing yourself goes beyond awareness of preferences or goals. It requires being willing to dismantle the identity you've built if it stands in the way of peace. It means asking, is this version of me helping me grow, or merely keeping me safe from judgment, rejection, but safe from admitting that I am still learning, still evolving, still unfinished. When you let go of the identity contract, something remarkable happens. You become less reactive. You stop seeing every disagreement as a personal attack. You no longer need every interaction to affirm who you are. You stop chasing misunderstandings. You let people think what they think because you know who you are, and that ing doesn't need defending. But here's the paradox. The ego tricks you into thinking that defending your image is strength, that being seen as certain unshakable, always composed is the goal. True strength is humility. It's saying, yes, I used to believe that, I've changed, or perhaps I was wrong, or I don't need to convince you. That's not weakness, that is power. Now your identity isn't rigid, it breathes, it adapts, it evolves, it doesn't collapse when someone pushes back. Consider how much energy you've spent managing image, explaining yourself, replaying comments, conversations, just because someone didn't see you the way you wanted. That's not living, that's reacting, and reaction is always rooted in fear, fear of misunderstanding, fear of not being enough, fear that if the image cracks, you will fall apart. But you won't. You are not the image, you are the awareness behind it. Carl Jung also said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you were told to be, but not who you think you must be, but who you truly are. When you strip away labels, pressure, and performance, that version of you doesn't need applause. It doesn't need defense. It just exists, steady, present, real, you are. When you live from that place, you become untouchable, not because nothing affects you, but because nothing defines you, without your permission. You're no longer chained to reactions. You respond from clarity, wholeness, and depth. The identity you think you are, the one you've been holding on to, is often the root of your suffering. As long as your peace depends on protecting that version, you'll never feel safe. You'll always chase approval, dodge criticism, and try to stay inside the lines of an identity that may have served you once, but now just limits you. So tear up the contract. You don't need to be the smartest, most respected, or most agreeable. You are Nell. I need honesty about what you're still clinging to, about the parts of you that feel they still need to earn love, respect, or belonging. And when you admit that, you're already free, because now you're guided by truth, not image. Your truth doesn't require performance or perfection, only presence. Sometimes you learn to wear a mask, not the kind from costume shops, but the invisible kind, a smile when you're hurt, silence when you want to scream, confidence that hides uncertainty. It didn't happen all at once. Maybe you shrank your truth in a relationship to keep the peace. Maybe you held back pain to avoid being seen as dramatic. Maybe you overachieved, overexplained, overcompensated, just to feel like you were enough. The mask isn't evil. It was born from survival, from moments when it felt safer to perform than to be seen. It helped you navigate a world that isn't always kind to authenticity. But as time went on, the mask stopped being a tool, and it began to merge with your identity until you couldn't tell where it ended and where you began. And now you're exhausted, not from weakness, but because living out of alignment is one of the heaviest burdens a person can carry. Every interaction becomes a calculation, every conversation a performance. Every room feels like a stage where you measure your words, dial down your opinions, or play the role others expect of you. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But before you reach that person, you must let go of who you've been pretending to be, the version built to impress, to protect, to please. That version may have won approval, but it never brought peace. It may have kept you liked, but it didn't make you feel truly loved, because deep down you knew they weren't loving you, but they were loving the mask." And that's where suffering begins, because pretending is a kind of betrayal, soft, subtle, but a betrayal nonetheless. Every time you silence your truth to be accepted, a piece of your soul pays. Every time you laugh when it hurts, downplay your needs, or act unaffected while inside you're falling apart. But the gap between who you are and who you present widens. Socrates once said, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom, but knowing yourself requires confronting the parts you've hidden. Not only from others, but from yourself. It means asking the tough questions. But who am I when no one is watching? What do I believe when I stop trying to be agreeable? What do I truly want, not just what's expected?" The answers may shake you, but they may unravel the persona you've spent years building. But on the other side awaits something far more real, more peaceful. When you burn the mask, but you stop negotiating for belonging, stop earning worth through performance. You stop fearing misunderstanding because you finally understand yourself. Aristotle said, "Happiness belongs to the self-sufficient, and self-sufficiency isn't just material independence, but it's emotional sovereignty. It's showing up as you are, unapologetically and letting the world respond as it will. Some will draw closer, some will walk away. Either way, you're finally seen, not for the role, not for the reputation, but for the soul. There's a freedom in that, quiet and steady. It looks like speaking honestly even when your voice trembles. It looks like choosing peace over perfection. It looks like no longer feeling the need to prove your value in every room. And no, it doesn't mean abandoning growth. It means growing from truth, not pressure. It means developing not to become worthy, but because you already are. You're not chasing wholeness, you're returning to it. People will feel the difference. When you live without a mask, your presence becomes magnetic. Not because you're trying to impress, but because you're real. People sense when someone is grounded in their truth. That there's a quiet strength in it, a peace that needs no explanation. The world may not always reward it, but your soul will. Carl Jung also said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But if you can do that, if you can face fears, flaws, and desires without turning away, you'll stop needing the mask. Now you're not hiding from others. You're no longer hiding from yourself." Most people walk through life hoping it will be smooth, calm, predictable. They say, "I just want peace," or "I can't handle another problem." as if life must wait until they're ready. Br. But life doesn't ask permission. Chaos doesn't knock. The question is never whether it will arrive, but it's how you handle it when it does. That is the difference between being reactive and being ready. Emotional resilience isn't built in peaceful moments. It's built before the storm, in silence, through what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. The idea is simple but powerful. Visualize what could go wrong before it happens. Not to create fear or attract suffering. But to rehearse your response, to train your mind before impact. Most people don't do this. They walk through life with unspoken assumptions, but today will go well. People will be respectful, nothing will go wrong. So when someone is rude, when a plan fails, when emotions run high, but they collapse. Not because the situation is unbearable, but because they never prepared for it. And what you don't prepare for will own you. Imagine starting your day with 2 minutes of premeditation. Pause. Think. Today I might be ignored, but someone might disappoint me. I might feel triggered, but. Then walk through these scenarios, not with panic, but calm. See the person rolling their eyes. Feel the tension rise. Instead of reacting, breathe. Choose silence. Picture yourself grounded. What you're building is muscle, emotional muscle. And like all muscle, it grows through resistance. The Stoics weren't pessimists. They knew the best way to stay calm was to expect heat and practice staying cool within it. Aristotle said, "We become just by doing just acts, but temperate by doing temperate acts, brave by doing brave acts." But how do you start acting brave if you've never practiced it in your mind? The brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. Athletes, performers, soldiers, surgeons, they all use mental rehearsal. But why not you? When you rehearse. Chaos. Before IT hits, you shift from emotionally fragile to emotionally prepared. You no longer rely on circumstances to stay balanced. You rely on training. And that training is simple. Visualize the difficult and see yourself moving through IT with grace. When anger rises, and it will, don't fight it. Don't shame it. Slow it down, peel it back. Ask yourself, what am I protecting right now? What belief about myself feels threatened? Then breathe. That breath is where you reclaim your power. You won't always get it right. You'll snap sometimes. That's okay. Growth isn't perfect. But every time you choose reflection over reaction, you rewrite your story. You become less driven by pride and more anchored in truth. Most people think power is loud, quick words, sharp comebacks, dominance. But real, grounded power often looks like stillness. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you are strong enough to wait, because you've realized that silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. In the space between reaction and response lies awareness. Most people rush past this door, words fly, emotions spike, and mouths open before minds catch up. But when you pause, when you feel everything and say nothing, you enter that door. That's where the unconscious becomes conscious, where you stop being led by impulses and start observing them. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The sacred pause is the first step towards self-mastery. It lets you step outside automatic programming, the defensiveness, the ego, the insecurity, and ask, what's really happening inside me right now? One breath, one beat of silence can reveal more than 1,000 words. It shows your wounds, your triggers, where pride ends and clarity begins. It tells you whether your next words will come from truth or fear, from insight or habit. We live in a world that idolizes speed, instant opinions, quick replies. But wisdom doesn't rush. Truth doesn't shout. Those who have mastered themselves aren't the loudest. They are the ones who can hold silence without needing to fill it. Socrates said, "The greatest way to live with honor is to be what you pretend to be." Most pretend to be strong, but true strength isn't dominance. It's discipline. It's holding your energy steady, observing chaos without becoming it. It's staying grounded even when emotions urge you to react. This doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It means feeling deeper, noticing more. Anger protects something vulnerable. Sadness isn't weakness, it's longing. Anxiety points to where you still seek control, and you can sit with all of it without judgment. This is emotional sovereignty, responding from awareness instead of reacting from conditioning. The sacred pause strengthens each time you choose it. Every breath you take before reacting trains your nervous system, builds inner calm, and turns you into a more powerful, resilient version of yourself. Plato said, "Wise men speak because they have something to say, fools because they have to say something." The pause gives you discernment. It lets you tell the difference between pain and truth, urgency and importance, what must be said now and what is better left unspoken. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not defend yourself, not because you surrender, but because you no longer need every moment to prove something. You choose peace over being right, alignment over noise. Strength is compassion in action, the quiet courage to stay calm when provoked, to observe without absorbing, to respond without adding fuel. Real power isn't in dominating, it's in self-mastery, presence, and holding your ground. Every insult, every slight, every judgment is a mirror. Not of them, but of what is, still unhealed inside you. If you can observe without catching it, you reclaim your energy. Watch it fall past you. Let it hit the ground, powerless, empty. That's stillness. That's freedom. Aristotle said, anybody can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree at the right time, that is not easy. Be quick to observe, slow to react. Most insults aren't about you. They are projections of pain, tension, or fear. Visualization helps. See harsh words as floating past you, paper birds or pebbles hitting the ground. Don't analyze, don't fight, just let them pass. With practice, insults lose their power, not because you numb yourself, but because you awaken to your own strength. Socrates said, "He who is not a good servant will not be a good master. Before mastering the world, master yourself. Step back, observe and watch your impulses. Observer mode isn't avoidance, it's leadership. It's awareness over reaction. When you respond from this place, your life changes. You stop being swept away by every wave, every glance, every tone. You see patterns. You choose responses instead of reacting to old wounds. You become a mountain that doesn't move in the wind, not stubborn, just grounded in truth. Plato said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." The greatest power is not in speech, but in restraint, to stay centered, to see the game without needing to win it, to withhold reaction when the moment does not serve your peace. Practice this daily. Pause, observe, breathe, step into the quiet power of watching instead of reacting. Choose peace not because you fear conflict, but because you know the cost of being constantly inside it. Let others be wrong. Let their stories stay theirs. You don't need to correct every perception. Live your truth so fully that your life becomes the answer. The world lightens when you no longer absorb its judgments. Your energy is too valuable to give away to what doesn't belong to you. Not every word deserves attention. Not every opinion deserves engagement. Not every judgment deserves correction. Preserve your peace. Watch, breathe, and walk through life unshaken. True power is silent. It comes from self-mastery, compassion, and presence. It comes from seeing, understanding, and choosing your responses. You are not your anger. You are not your pain. You are the awareness behind them. And in that awareness you are free. Let people be who they are. Let them speak from their pain if they must, but don't catch it. Don't turn their noise into your problem. Let it fall. Most people want to be emotionally strong, but only in theory. They love the idea of being calm, grounded, unbothered. But when the trigger shows up, a late reply, a disrespectful tone, someone cutting them off in traffic, that imagined strength disappears. They don't see it, but they're missing life's best opportunities to train. Emotional strength isn't built by avoiding discomfort. It's built by facing small triggers every single day and choosing not to flinch. Think about the body. You don't grow stronger muscles by sitting still. You grow them through resistance, strain, effort. Discomfort is where growth begins. The same is true for the mind, and even more true for your emotions. Your triggers are your emotional dumbbells. Every time someone irritates you and you don't react, every time anger, jealousy, or fear rises and you breathe through it instead of feeding it, you are retraining your nervous system. You are rewiring your emotional reflexes. You are building endurance where there used to be panic, where there used to be impulse. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. It can also lead to mastery if you choose to work with it. Treat life as a gym, your emotions as the muscles you're here to strengthen." Most people live in emotional reaction. Something happens, they respond automatically, no pause, no awareness, then regret it later. Trigger, reaction, regret, repeat. They wonder why they feel drained all the time. It's because they've never trained their emotional body. Once you start training with your triggers, everything changes. You stop taking things personally, not because you're numb, but because you're precise. You can feel the emotion rise, observe it, and choose what to do with it. That choice, that strength, that self-ownership, that's freedom. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Your heart jumps, your breath tightens. That moment is a rep, not for your arms, but for your awareness. You can honk, curse, spiral, or you can inhale. You can remember this is training. The other person is a stranger you'll never meet again. But your reaction, that stays with you, that shapes you. Multiply that moment by hundreds each day, and you have your emotional gym. The coworker who interrupts you, the slow Wi-Fi, the spilled coffee, the passive-aggressive comment. Rep, rep, rep. With each one, you get stronger, not by force, but by choice. Not by pretending it doesn't bother you, but by staying conscious in the middle of it. Socrates said, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new." Don't waste time fighting every trigger. Don't obsess over being annoyed or disrespected. Instead, ask, how can I use this? How can I let this become the rep I needed today? Emotional mastery isn't about never being triggered. It's about using your triggers as training partners. That means you stop avoiding hard conversations. You stop ghosting situations that make you uncomfortable. You stop blaming the world for not being easier. Instead, you get better at holding your ground inside the discomfort. Frustration becomes resistance. Envy becomes insight. Sadness becomes part of the workout. You're building emotional capacity, the ability to hold big energy without losing your direction. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Emotional excellence is no different. If you want to be calm under pressure, practice calm when things feel pressurized. If you want to be patient, your daily annoyances are the arena. This training rewires your brain. Your nervous system becomes less reactive. Your breath deepens. Your default response slows. You start to feel something you may not have felt in a long time: space. Space between stimulus and response. Space to choose something higher than your past patterns. Space to decide who you're becoming. That space, that's your evolution. Most people avoid discomfort, dodge triggers, escape anything that pokes at their wounds. You're not here for avoidance. You're here to grow. That means walking toward tension, not with fear, but with purpose. Let your triggers teach you. Let them expose your edges. Let them show you the parts of yourself still holding on to old beliefs, old insecurities, old reactions. Each spark of irritation, pride, or panic, pause. See it as the bell ringing at the start of a new set. Your moment to lift. Your moment to choose. Your moment to become who you say why. Wow. This is emotional strength. Quiet, steady, built in the moments no one sees. Because no one applauds when you pause instead of snapping. But those reps are the ones that count. Those moments build the emotional body. Life's not punishing you, it's shaping you. Most people speak from their wound, not their wisdom. They unload what they feel without clarity. There's a time to speak and a time to wait. Not forever, just long enough to let the sting pass, to let the noise settle, to let your message find clarity. Carl Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of others. You can't know your darkness while it's flaring. while your nervous system is flooded, while your ego screams for validation, revenge, or defense. In that state, you're not speaking from your true self. You're speaking from your wound. And wounds don't have good language. Silence at the right time isn't weakness, it's strategy, it's restraint. It protects you from saying something that might feel good for a second, but damage everything you've built for years. That pause, that moment, is where your real strength is tested. It's not hard to speak when emotions are high. It's hard to wait, to feel everything and still say nothing, to sit with the pain, not project it, to let your inner storm pass before you bring anyone else into it. True strength looks like this: I'm in pain, and I still choose not to hurt you. I'm angry, but I won't let that be the only voice in the room. I'm triggered, but I won't turn that into a weapon. Silence used wisely is not silence at all. It's strength. It protects your peace, your dignity, and your future, even when the present feels heavy. No outburst can match that power. Most people become their emotions. One moment calm, the next consumed. They forget the most important truth: you are not the emotion. You are the one watching it. That difference, the line between feeling and observing, is the line between chaos and clarity. Feelings are visitors. They show up, they speak, they leave. If you learn to pause, even for a breath, you create space between yourself and the emotion. In that space, you reclaim your role. You are not anger. You are not fear. You are the observer. You are the one who can choose not to react. Disidentification is the superpower. It lets you say, I feel anger rising, but I am not that anger. That shift gives you choice. Choice transforms reaction into response. You stop being pulled around like a puppet. You start guiding your behavior with intention. This doesn't mean suppressing or denying your feelings. You welcome them. You feel them deeply. But you don't become them. You let them flow through, not root in. Think of emotions like fire alarms, loud, urgent, impossible to ignore, but you don't smash them. You investigate. You find the source. Is it a real fire or just smoke? Every time you observe instead of reacting, you get stronger, more centered, more free. You stop walking through life as a slave to your moods. People feel the difference in your energy. You're not easily rattled, not easily provoked. Not because you don't feel, but because you don't let feelings define you. Plato wrote, "The first and best victory is to conquer self." You conquer self, not by force but by awareness, by noticing the exact moment when emotion wants to take the wheel and quietly keeping your hands on it instead. This work takes practice, patience, discipline, but each moment of disidentification brings you closer to emotional sovereignty. You no longer need the world to be perfect to be okay. Your peace depends on inner separation between you and the storm. You are not the anger, you are not the fear, you are not the ego shouting for control. You are the one watching it. All unfold with quiet power, with the ability to decide what comes next. The world won't go quiet just because you found your peace. People will still cut you off, misread your intentions, fail to apologize. Life will still throw the unexpected. But if you've mastered this, you won't shake. The point was never to change the world. The point was to change how you move through it. Most live in constant emotional turbulence. They try to manage everything outside themselves. But what if you didn't need to control the waves? What if you just learned to stand still inside them? Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." You become untouchable, not because nothing touches you, but because it no longer owns you. You stay centered, quiet. That's the power of all the inner work. Watching, detaching, disidentifying. You live not as a reactor, but as a responder, and the difference is everything. Reacting is fast, defensive, emotional. Responding is slow, deliberate, conscious. It comes from presence, not panic. Once you live from response, the world looks different, not because it changed, but because you did. The same insult that used to burn now sounds like static. The same rejection that once collapsed you now feels like redirection. You lose the urge to prove yourself. You no longer need to win arguments or control outcomes. You don't need an apology to find closure. You don't need everyone to understand. That's emotional freedom. You still feel. You're not numb. You notice betrayal, sarcasm, loss. You still care. But you respond from the wisdom forged through experience. That quiet confidence shows in how you breathe when everyone else is yelling, in how you choose silence over proving your point, in how you walk away, not out of weakness, but because you're no longer trying to convince someone of your worth. Plato wrote, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." The greatest power isn't dominance or control, it's restraint, discipline, the ability to stay aligned when everything around you pulls at your edges. You don't chase closure. You don't repeat stories that drain you. You don't sit in rooms where your peace must shrink. You walk forward with less noise, more clarity. This is the final frame. The world still roars, but your soul stays silent, not because you're avoiding life, but because you've learned to meet it with awareness, with steadiness, with inner strength that can't be faked or announced. You're not triggered. You're trained, not reactive. You're responsible for your energy, your choices, your presence. The world notices, not because you're louder, but because you carry something rare, a stillness no insult can shatter, a calm that doesn't rely on comfort, a clarity born from walking straight through chaos and coming out unshaken. When the world pulls at your edges, remember, your strength isn't in how loudly you react, but in how quietly you remain centered. Let them shout. Let life twist. You are not here to match the storm. You are here to master your calm.